To the September 23rd, 2021 board meeting. My name is Sang-Oh, President of the board. Before we convene, I would like to remind everyone present that the board is a consumer protection agency charged with administering and enforcing pharmacy law. Where protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. This meeting is being conducted consistent with the provisions of Governor Gavin Newsom's Executive Order N-8-21. Participants watching the webcast will only be able to observe the meeting. Anyone interested in participating in the meeting must join the WebEx meeting. Information and instructions are posted on our website. As I facilitate this meeting, I will announce when we are accepting public comment. I have advised the meeting moderator to allow 2 minutes to each individual providing comments. This approach is necessary to facilitate this meeting and ensure the board has the opportunity to complete its necessary business, including its strategic planning session. I appreciate everyone's understanding. Before we get started, I would like to ask the meeting moderator to provide general instructions. Moderator?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Welcome to the California State Board of Pharmacy meeting. Before we get started, just a reminder to board members and senior staff who are not speaking to please mute their microphone. If I detect background noise during the meeting as a result of unmuted microphones, I will interject with a brief friendly reminder or simply mute the microphone. To facilitate public comment, we will be utilizing the WebEx question and answers feature, also referred to as the Q&A panel. When the board president reaches a point in the agenda at which public comment is appropriate, public comment will be requested. At the board's direction, I will turn on and announce the opening of the Q&A feature. It's not necessary to identify yourself in order to make public comment. Please note that the Q&A feature is being used only as a means for members of the public to represent that they would like to make a verbal comment. Once muted, the member of the public may verbally state their comment. The Q&A feature is not to be used for typing out questions or for board members to communicate with one another. If any attendees use a profane name, they will not be called upon to prevent members of the public from being subjected to profane language. While you are free to express criticism or negative views, for the sake of the members of the public participating on the call, please do not use profane language when making public comments to the board. And with that, I return the meeting back to you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Trish. Thank you, Ms. Moderator. Following open session as included in the agenda, members will convene in closed session. Due to technological limitations, adjournment will not be broadcast. Adjournment will immediately follow closed session, and there will be no other items of business discussed. I would now like to take a roll call and establish a quorum. Members, as I call your name, please remember to open your line before speaking. We're going to start with Maria Serpa.
Here.
Hi, Maria. Maria's here. Jake Patel. Hi,
Good morning.
Jake. Good morning. Jake is here. Cheryl Butler.
Good morning.
Hi, Cheryl. Cheryl's here. Jose de la Paz.
Present.
Thank you, Jose. Shirley Kim.
Good morning.
Good morning, Shirley. Ricardo.
Good morning.
Hello,
Thank you for here,
Ricardo.
too.
Good morning. Nicole.
Morning.
Good
Hi,
morning.
Nicole.
Hi.
Debbie Beal.
Morning.
Hi, Debbie. Jason Wise.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Hi, Jason. Thank you. And I am here, so the quorum is, we have a quorum. With a quorum being established, the board will now entertain any public comments for items not on the agenda. To facilitate this portion of the meeting, as I previously announced, the meeting moderator will open up the line for individuals to provide public comment. You're not required to identify yourself, but may do so. As we open the lines, I would like to remind everyone that the board cannot take action on these items except to decide whether to place an item on a future agenda. Members, following review of the public comments for this agenda item, I will survey members to determine if any members have preference for items to be placed on a future agenda. Moderator?
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I've opened up the question and answers panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is the moderator. At this time, I see no request for public comment. Mr. Board President, shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's closed.
All right. So no public comment. We're going to move right on to the agenda item 3, discussion and consideration of adoption of board-approved regulation, Title 16, California Code of Regulations, Section 1709, related to ownership, management, and control of business entities, including consideration of public comments received during the 45-day comment period. Members, included in the meeting materials is a background information on the regulation. Thank you to staff and council for preparing detailed responses to the comments received, along with the relevant statutory provisions. I appreciate the history and understand that the regulation language was developed with the expertise from an Attorney General from the Business and Tax section of the Office of the Attorney General. Members, I'm hopeful you all had an opportunity to review the meeting materials, including the comments received and staff recommendations. Both Ms. Tatayan and Ms. Miley are available to answer any legal questions you may have on the language, comments received, and staff recommendations developed in response to comments. In reviewing the comments, I agree with the recommendations of staff and would like to hear from other members. As part of your comments, I would also entertain a motion. Should others agree with the recommendations from staff, I note the meeting materials include a possible motions. Members, any comments or anyone willing to make a motion?
Mr. President, I will make the possible motion.
Thank you, Ms. Debbie Beal. Go ahead, Debbie.
Well, I'm just going to make the motion that's on the screen here to accept the board staff's recommended comment responses and adopt the regulatory language as noticed for 45-day comment as of July 23rd, 2021. Additionally, delegate to the executive officer the authority to make technical or non-substantive changes as may be required by the control agency to complete the rulemaking file.
Sounds like
And this is Ricardo Sanchez. I'll second that.
Thank you, Debbie, for a great motion, and thank you, Ricardo, for seconds. Any other member comments? Hearing none, and with a motion and second on the floor, I'm going to open the discussion for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines as appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type, "I would like to make a comment," using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. If you're not seeing the panel, you may click on the question mark within the square in the bottom right of your screen. We are displaying instructions. All right, this is a moderator, and I see no request for comment at this time. Mr. Board President, shall I close the Q&A feature?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator.
You're welcome.
With the motion and second and public comment received, I will now take a roll call vote. Members, as a reminder, please open your line before voting. Maria Serpa?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Maria votes yes. Jig Patel?
Yes.
Thank you, Jig. Jig votes yes. Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl votes yes. Jose de la Paz?
Yes.
Thank you, Jose. Jose votes yes. Shirley Kim?
Yes.
Thank you, Shirley. Shirley votes yes. Ricardo Sanchez?
I vote yes, too.
Thank you, Ricardo. Ricardo votes yes. Nicole Thibault?
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Nicole votes yes. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. Debbie votes yes. Jason Wise?
Yes.
Thank you, Jason. Jason votes yes, and I vote yes as well. The motion passes. Thank you, members. We're moving on to the agenda item 4, discussion and consideration of requests to waive pharmacy law provisions consistent with the authority of Business and Professions Code Section 4062. Members, as I shared during our emergency meeting earlier this month, I believe it is appropriate to consider the current delegation to the board president to determine if changes are appropriate. As an organization, I believe we have been very thoughtful and deliberate in our response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and our ability to respond quickly to the dynamic nature of the emergency in large part has been through the delegated authority. The meeting materials include the two separate provisions for delegation. I note that the delegated authority of the President to extend an existing waiver expired on August 31, 2021. The authority for the President to approve new waiver remains. Provided in the meeting materials for our consideration is an alternative approach to the delegation that would provide the board president the authority to approve or extend waivers through June 30th, 2022, or until 90 days following the declared disaster, whichever is sooner. Members, I would appreciate your thoughts on the issue. I would also welcome a motion if any member believes changes to the current delegated authority is appropriate. Members, anyone, any comments or anyone willing to make a motion?
I'm happy to make a motion.
Thank you, Debbie. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna kind of, let's see, so we want to, so we would like to extend, through, I don't know, do we have a proposed language versus me trying to wing this?
Yeah, I think there is a, we
I'm
can say the board grant the board president to approve or extend waivers as appropriate based on current conditions through June 31, 2022, or until 90 days following the declared disaster, whichever is sooner.
I see it, okay. Yep, that's my motion. Do we need, yeah, there's no need to have, a delegated authority. Okay, yep, that's my motion.
I second this, Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl. Eileen, is that clear enough?
I think the way you phrased it, President O, was clear enough.
Okay, thank you, Eileen. All right, with a motion and second, and then any other member comments? Hearing none, and we're going to open the discussion for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines as appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on this item, please type, "I would like to make a comment," using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no request for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, moderator.
You're welcome.
With a motion and second and public comment, well, no public comment, but I will now take a roll call vote. Members, as a reminder, please open your line before voting. We're going to start with Jake Patel.
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Where's Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Jose de la Paz.
Yes.
Thank you, Jose. Shirley Kim.
Yes.
Thank you, Shirley. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole Thibault.
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. Jason Wise.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. And I vote yes, the motion passes. Next waiver related to the larger agenda item is for our consideration to request and extend the mass vaccination site waiver. This waiver has been used to facilitate the significant COVID-19 vaccination effort in California and is set to expire on October 16, 2021, unless it is extended. Staff have confirmed with CDPH that the waiver is still needed. Further, with the recent expansion of approval of boosters to additional population, it may become more necessary in various regions throughout California. Included in the meeting materials is a recommendation to delegate to the board president the authority to extend the mass vaccination site waiver at their discretion after consultation with the California Department of Public Health. Members, I would appreciate your thoughts on the issue and also would welcome a motion if any member believes the proposed approach offered in the meeting materials is appropriate. Members?
So be happy to make a motion, unless somebody else would like to.
Thank you, Debbie. Go
I'll
ahead.
second it.
Let me make
Thank
it
you,
first,
Jen.
Dick. I'll move that we delegate authority to grant the board president the ability to the authority to extend waivers regarding mass vaccination sites based on at your discretion after consultation with CDPH.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah. Do I need to say for until 90 days?
I think because of the first motion we had, Debbie, I think we now it could be it's if it's okay with you, we don't need to put date on this one as far as I know.
90 days after the disaster. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's okay. So so just the motion is to delegate to the board president the authority to extend the waiver at their discretion after consultation with CDPH. And is that sound good, Debbie?
That's fine.
Okay, Jig, is that okay with you?
Yes, I'll second that. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Jig. Any other member comments? Okay, not a lot of comments today. With a motion and second on the floor, I will now open the discussion for public comment. Moderator, please open the lines as appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I have opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public wishes to comment on this agenda item, please type "I would like to make a comment" and submit it to all panelists using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no request for comment at this time. Mr. Board President, shall I close the Q&A?
Yes, please. Thank
Oh,
you, Ms.
you're
Tricia.
welcome.
All right, so with the motion and second and public comment received, we're gonna now take a vote. Cheryl Butler.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Jose Del Paz.
Yes.
Thank you, Jose. Shirley Kim.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shirley. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole Tebow.
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. Jason Wise.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. And Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you, Jig. And I vote yes, the motion passes. Also, just a reminder for the public, I know that in the last meeting, the votes for some members weren't being heard on certain type of communication, whether it be internet bridge or audio bridge. So if there's any technical issues, anyone is having a hard time hearing anyone's votes, please let us know so that we will try to make adjustment. Moving on to the next item is site-specific waiver for California Department of Public Health Alternate Care Site Facility, Sacramento HPE 57779. Members, the last waiver-related issue for our consideration today is reinstatement of a temporary hospital license issued to CDPH. The license history is included in the meeting materials along with background information. Included in the meeting materials is a recommendation to delegate to the board president the authority to extend the temporary license as the president's discretion after consultation with the California Department of Public Health. Members, I would appreciate your thoughts on the issue. I would also welcome a motion if any member believes the proposed approach offered in the meeting materials is appropriate. Members, any comments or anyone willing to make a motion?
Mr. President, this is Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
I would like to move, as stated in the meeting materials, that we further extend the license through the end of the year.
Okay, that sounds
delegate to the board president the authority to extend the waiver after consultation with CDPH.
sounds great.
And
And
I will second that.
thank you, Jose. Maria motions, Jose seconds. Any other member comments? Okay, hearing none, we're going to move on to the public. Oh, go
I
ahead.
apologize. This is Anne. I just want to clarify, Dr. Serpa, is the stated motion to extend the waiver at the discretion of the president after consultation, or did you want it also only through the end of the year? Thank you. I apologize for the interruption.
I wanted both, but I'm not quite sure if you'd prefer just the second. So the motion was through the end of the year and to further delegate authority to the board president to extend as needed. Is that okay?
Just a point of clarification, I apologize again, is that so we're going to extend it through the end of the year, and then if additional extension is necessary, further delegating to the board president after that point?
Yes, is that the preferred method?
That works fine. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding the motion, that we're capturing it correctly. Thank you for the clarification, and again, I apologize for the interruption.
So my I guess clarification would be, Mr. President, does that meet your need, or instead of having a two-part motion, would you just prefer to have a single your delegation?
No, I think it would be fine either way, Maria, and I think we can just keep on with our current motion. So that should be, I think, sufficient. So we're okay, and thank you, Maria, for the motion, and also Jose, if that's okay with you for the second.
That's good with me. I would second that.
Perfect. Thank you. And with the motion and second, and we're going to move to public comment. Moderator, please open the lines for public comments.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to make a comment, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of the screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions for your reference, and we'll give you a moment. All right, this is a moderator. I see no request for comment at this time. Shall I close the Q&A panel?
Sounds good. It seems like everybody's just saving for the strategic session. Okay,
Yes.
so we are going to now take a vote with a motion, a second, and public comment. So we're going to start with Jose.
Yes.
Thank you, Jose. Shirley Kim. Thank you,
Yeah.
Shirley. Ricardo Sanchez.
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole.
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie Veal.
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. Jason Wise.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason. Maria Serpa.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jig Patel.
Yes.
Thank you, Jig. And Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. And I vote yes, the motion passes. We're moving on to the agenda item 5, discussion and consideration of requests from University of California, Irvine School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences for board recognition pursuant to Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 1719. Our final agenda before we begin our strategic planning activities is a request for the board to recognize the University of California, Irvine for purposes of issuing intern licenses to students enrolled in their program. As included in the meeting materials, UCI has received pre-candidate status from a CPE. However, candidate status cannot be achieved until the school produces its first class of graduates. Absent board approval, students will be unable to progress through their education. For our consideration is a possible motion to grant board recognition for UCI to purposes of issuing intern licenses. I believe the approval is appropriate and would appreciate member thoughts. I would also entertain a motion should members believe it is appropriate. Members?
I certainly think it is appropriate. This is Cheryl.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Um,
You want to make a motion?
What I'm trying to see, possible motion is to grant board recognition of University of California, Irvine School of Pharmacy pharmaceutical sciences for purposes of issuing intern licensing.
Sounds great. Anyone willing to second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jig. Jig seconds. Cheryl motions. Jig seconds. Any other member comments? Okay, hearing none, we're going to open up for public comments. Moderator, please open the lines.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I've opened up the Q&A panel. If any member of the public would like to comment on this agenda item, please type "I would like to make a comment" using the field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen and submit it to all panelists. We are displaying instructions and we'll give you a moment. And we do have one request for public comment from Jan Hirsch. So Jan, I will soon be giving you permission to unmute yourself. Please know that you'll have 2 minutes to speak and I will give you a 10-second warning. All right. You have been sent, Jan, you've been sent. Jan, you've been unmuted.
Great, thank you. I'm Jan Hirsch. I am the founding dean of the UC Irvine School of Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences, and I just wanted to let you know I am on the line if anyone has any questions, and we are looking forward to the board recognizing our new school. Thank you.
All right. And we have no further requests for public comment. Mr. Board President, shall I close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Tricia.
You're welcome.
And with a motion and second and public comment, I will now take a roll call vote. Members, as a reminder, please open your line before voting. Shirley Kim?
Yes.
Thank you, Shirley. Ricardo Sanchez?
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole Tebow?
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. Jason Wise?
Yes.
Thank you, Jason. Maria Serpa?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jig Patel?
Yes.
And Cheryl Butler?
Yes.
Thank you, Jig. Thank you, Cheryl. And Jose?
Yes.
Thank you, Jose. And I vote yes. The motion passes. All right, so we are moving on to the next agenda item 6, strategic planning session. As we transition to the strategic planning session, I request that you turn on your cameras. We are moving pretty fast, so it's only 9:30, which is great. And so I don't know if anyone is needing a break, but I think we can just process through until for about another hour or so. I'm gonna just wait until we get all the cameras on. Looks good. Okay. I can see everybody except Jason. And there it is. Everybody and Debbie. There you are. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And so I hope everybody had an opportunity to review the meeting materials. I know it's a lot, and that the draft objectives I provided was helpful. I think during the appropriate times in our discussion, those drafts may serve as a jumping off point for our discussion today. Also, as we progress through the planning session, when we begin our discussion and development of the respective goal areas, I have asked the meeting moderator to extend public comment to 3 minutes for each commenter. I recommend that as we discuss the respective areas, we focus on the intent of each item and ensure a common understanding, but allow some flexibility to finalize language later, especially during the goal development. I believe this approach will ensure the board completes the session on time. If members feel comfortable, as president, I'm happy to finalize the language with staff following the session and prior to publication. Such delegation could be facilitated through inclusion in the various motions as we progress. I will now turn the meeting over to Tricia St. Clair, Strategic Business Analyst and Facilitator with Solid Planning, to guide us through the process. Ms. St. Clair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. I am going to share my screen. All right, so welcome to the California State Board of Pharmacy Strategic Planning Session. My name is Tricia St. Clair, and I am a Strategic Business Analyst and Facilitator with Solid Planning, and I'm here with co-facilitator. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Sarah Irani. I'm also a strategic business analyst and facilitator with Solid.
So our roles today are, we are a neutral party. So we are not representing DCA, we're not representing licensees, we're simply providing structure for the board's strategic planning process. As such, you will see us typing up suggestions today. And please don't concern yourself with spelling or grammar. What we're doing today is capturing ideas, and we will clean up the spelling and grammar later. And I mention that because some groups have been so diligent about spelling and grammar that they completely forget about the brainstorming part of the session. So just a little note there. So your participation today is so important. So we ask that you please minimize distractions. If you can mute your cell phones, put them face down. We really want to hear from everyone today. So if you can, please respect one another's contributions. And we ask that you suspend judgment during brainstorming. Perhaps some suggestions will not fit the board's mandate. And if that happens, we have legal counsel or the executive staff to let us know that. Please self-monitor for time limits and side conversations. I know you have closed session after this, so we want to make sure you have time for that. And please be willing to reach consensus. And by that, I mean, ask yourself, can I live with this? So some of the objectives might not be, you might not be too fond of, but please ask yourself if you can live with it. So our agenda, we've already done introductions. I'll give a quick overview of the strategic planning process. You'll have a chance to review the board's mission, vision, and values, as well as the goal statements, which are the goal definitions. And then we will have you creating objectives for licensing your 5 goal areas, the licensing, enforcement, legislation, communication, and public education, and organizational development. So if you're looking at a directory, so for example, if you're at a mall or you're downtown or you're at the airport and you're looking at a directory, what is the most important thing to first find? And I can't see hands raised right now because I'm sharing my screen, so feel free to unmute yourself and speak out if you'd like.
My location. Where am I at in the map?
Exactly. Thank you. Because when I was a Girl Scout and my leader asked me this question, my response was the restrooms. But you're right. It's where you are, because that determines how you get to where you're going. So that's what your mission is. Your mission statement is where you are. It's why you exist, your purpose, and that's where you're starting from. Likewise, the environmental analysis. And when we say environment, we're just talking, what we mean is your workplace, the board's workplace, and the world outside it. That environmental analysis is your stakeholders saying, these are the priorities we feel you should address with your strategic plan. So that's your starting point. Your vision is where you're going. That's your destination. If you complete your mission, that's where you end up. And how you'll get there is represented by your goals. Those are your day-to-day operations, as well as your objectives, which we're creating today. So to illustrate the importance of having a strategic plan, we're going to play a quick game. And here's how it works. So you're seeing a jumble of numbers on the screen. When I say go, what I'd like you to do is touch the numbers sequentially. So you can use your finger. If you don't want to touch your monitor, you can use a stylus, a pencil eraser, a capped pen. But I want you to touch the numbers sequentially. So by that, I mean, it's just like you're counting. You'll first find the 1, then the 2, then the 3, then the 4, and just keep touching the numbers sequentially to see the highest number that you can get. And when I say go, I'll want you to do that. So I'm just setting a little timer here so I can be mindful of the time. All right, so you'll have 30 seconds and go. All right, and time. So did anyone get as high as 10? And I can't see hands raised, so Sarah, you can nod your head if someone got as high as 10. Anyone raising their hand?
I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Okay, all right, yeah, it's hard. They're all jumbled together. There's actually a strategy for playing this game. So I'm going to reveal the strategy. So the numbers are arranged in a pattern. The number 1 is found in the 1 quadrant, the number 2 in the 2nd quadrant, the 3, and so forth until you get to 9. When you get to 9, you go back to the top. That's where 10 is. And then 11 is in the 2 quadrant. So the numbers on the grid are telling you what direction, the path to follow. So as long as you keep touching numbers sequentially and following this grid pattern, you can successfully find all the numbers. So I'm going to give you another 30 seconds. And when I say go, I want you to touch the numbers sequentially, just like you did before. So wait just a moment. I'm setting my calendar, my timer. All right, and go. Okay, and time. So did people improve? Did they were people able to reach a higher number this time? I'm seeing some heads nod. Did anyone get as high as 15?
Yes.
Yes. Did anyone get as high as 30?
Yes.
Okay, what's the highest number someone got to?
I got to 40.
Excellent. All right. So this game is an illustration that can you accomplish something without a plan? Yes, you can, but you're going to be a lot less effective. It's going to take a lot more time and resources. But when you have a strategy, you can successfully and effectively achieve your goal with much less time and resources. So that's what the strategic plan is for. It's so that you can achieve your most important goals using the least amount of time and resources so that you can increase your effectiveness. So here is a roadmap of the strategic planning session. So we started with a preliminary meeting. We met with the executive staff, the board president, and we customized your strategic plan according to the board. Now, each board creates its own goals and goal statements, and it's up to the board whether or not to keep them from one strategic plan to the next. Once we decided on that, we went to the environmental scan. Again, when I say environment, we're just looking at the workplace and the world outside the board. So we conducted a stakeholder survey, a staff survey, and then we interviewed executive staff and board members. We then compiled that data into the environmental scan, which is part of your meeting materials. You were sent it with the objective worksheet for today. And then the arrow represents the planning session. That's where we are today. We will be reviewing your mission values. You'll have a chance to look at the environmental scan results if you need to reference them, and then you will be creating your objectives today. Well, approving pre-created ones and creating new ones. After today, a draft of your strategic plan will be presented to your board for later approval and adoption. Once that happens, we'll do action planning. And action planning happens with the staff. That's where we they break down each of the objectives you've come up with into steps that are assigned to staff with completion dates and with goal measurements. So that is the strategic planning process. And when we compile all that data from the environmental scan, we use a SWOT analysis, which is just a fancy acronym. I'm sure you were looking for another acronym in your life, right? It just stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So strengths and weaknesses are internal. They refer to the board processes. So for example, a strength could be that you offer online renewals. That could be a strength. A weakness could be a perception that processing times are slow. An opportunity could be the pandemic extending or providing an opportunity to extend scope of practice. And a threat could be a large pharmacy chain's working conditions not being so great. So those are just examples of each of these areas of the SWOT analysis. Here is a comparison of your environmental scan surveys, your last one in 2016 and then today's. If you look at the total, you will see a whopping 804% increase in participation, which is wonderful because it means you have more data to work with. You can also see how people identify themselves. So now we come to the mission statement. I'm going to give you just a moment to read it. And we have you read this because as you look at objectives and create new ones today, I want you to ask yourself, will this objective help further the board's mission statement? So it's like a guide for you. I'll give you a moment to read the vision statement. So as you create objectives or approve ones already pre-created, I want you to ask yourself, will this objective help us reach this vision statement? And then here are the board's values. So as you create objectives or approve ones pre-created, I want you to ask yourself, does this objective fit with the board's values? So again, your mission, vision, values are guides for this process. So this should look familiar. It's part of your objective worksheet. When we're creating objectives, we want them to be SMART. So specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-based. For example, if you came up with an objective of make licensing better, not very specific. My idea of better might be different than yours. Measurable, how do you measure better? Action-oriented, not so much. There's not a specific action to take. Realistic, probably. Time-based, not at all. But if you create an objective that you're going to process so many licensing applications in a given time period, like per month, that's specific. You've got an action, a specific action. It's measurable because you're coming up with that number. Action-oriented, yes, you're processing applications. Realistic, yes, because you're setting the parameters. So it's going to be realistic. And time-based, yes, you have a month to do that. So that's an example of a SMART objective. Here's just an example of applying the objective formula. So one of the objectives created using this formula could be create an expert witness manual for subject matter experts to increase effectiveness. So your resources, your toolkit for today are your guidelines for determining objectives, so your objectives worksheet, your 2021 environmental scan. Again, those are the priorities that your stakeholders would like your strategic plan to address. The goals with statements, and again, your compass on this journey, which is your mission, vision, and values. Any questions? And again, I can't see everyone, I just see a little bit, but I think we're good, okay. All right, so roles and responsibilities. The strategic direction of the board rests in the hands of those involved today. The executive officer and staff are responsible for implementing the strategic plan and ensuring strategic objectives are completed. So please recognize or remember that the staff has limited time and resources and that consumer protection is the board's mandate. All right, so our first section is licensing. I'm going to give my co-facilitator control so that she can type. Now, the board already came up with objectives using the worksheet. So what I'd like to do is go over those and just see if everyone agrees to keep those. And then if anyone wants to add new ones, we can do that as well. But before we look at them, does anyone need a little bit of time to refer to the environmental scan summary? and you can raise your hand. I'll have my co-facilitator nod her head if someone wants any more time. Not seeing her nod her head, so I think we're good to go on. Let me go ahead and give her control. Excuse me just a moment as we do this. All right. So my co-facilitator should now have control of my screen if case. All right, so we numbered these objectives to make it easier for you to reference them. And so we'll just go down the line, and then after we've gone through all these, and if you decide to keep them, then we'll be open to see if you want to add any more. And then after that, the board president will make a motion, we'll go to public comment, and then we'll go back and take a vote on whether or not to keep what you've decided. All right, so this first objective, I'll give you a moment to look at it, and if you can just, if you're unhappy with it, go ahead and raise your hand. Again, I can't see raised hands, but my co-facilitator can. So just take a look at one and let me know, let us know if you'd like to keep it. You can also
Tricia?
just unmute yourself. Yes?
Tricia, can I give back control so you can put it in edit mode? Because I realize I can't actually type in the presentation mode.
Yes, that's my bad. Sorry.
Thank you. No worries. You're good.
Yes, yes.
And
So,
I apologize.
This is Debbie. If maybe you can kind of talk this through, and maybe I'm just a little slow, but so let's say I look at number 1. Oopsie.
Sorry. Yes. Yes.
All right. So this action, so would these become new strategic items for licensing in this case? And it would be to assess and promote a balance in the resident and non-resident pharmacy to ensure fair and equal pharmacy-related services. Is that, am I kind of trying to look at that whole statement and say, yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree? I guess can you just kind of walk me through a little bit better so I can do this better?
Sure. Thank you, Debbie. Yes, so these are suggested objectives for your new strategic plan. So for the goal area of licensing, and if you agree to keep them today, then this is what the board would be working on in the next 3 to 5 years, however many years they assign this strategic planning or this particular strategic plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess I look at the first one, and I'm hoping other board members will kind of help me wrap my little brain around this. But to assess and promote a balance of resident and non-resident pharmacies to ensure fair and equal pharmacy-related services. I mean, I think our regulations currently ensure that whether you're a resident or non-resident pharmacy, you have to hit the same requirements that regardless of where you're situated. If you're servicing our consumers, there's certain requirements that you have to attain. So I'm not sure that we have to balance the resident and non-resident pharmacy, because that almost makes it sound like it's 80% of the pharmacies that that the consumers have access to are in California and 20% are out. So I guess I would not be in favor of that. I absolutely think that we currently already have this addressed by making sure resident and non-resident pharmacies have the same requirements. So I guess if anyone can speak to this and help me understand it better, I appreciate it.
Question. Before we get into the weeds, can I ask a process question?
Yes, please.
The material showed possible objectives.
Yes.
Where do we see the current objectives and determine if those were to continue or be changed in light of the possible objectives? It seems like I'm kind of feeling like I'm jumping in the middle.
Okay, thank you for asking that question. So the possible objectives that you see in your environmental scan report are objectives that stakeholders, and the stakeholders could be licensees or board members, suggested as that they could be objectives for your new strategic plan. None of those objectives are included here. The objectives that you're seeing here were created using that objectives worksheet and were sent in prior to this meeting. So,
so where are the current objectives from the previous plan?
Well, we're creating new objectives today. That's your strategic plan. So
to the history, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to catch up. I feel like I'm really behind for some reason. I'm not familiar with starting from scratch. So it appears like we're kind of creating a new strategic plan and throw out the history. So I'm just,
yeah. Okay, so yes, we are creating a new strategic plan, and your old strategic plan was for a number of years, and then we create, after that number of years, we create a new strategic plan based on the priorities that are found in your environmental scan. So the idea is, after such and such amount of time, your strategic plan gets old and stale. It's not addressing your current priorities. So,
right. So we're not updating it. We're just going to be starting with our current information.
Exactly. We're starting fresh.
Thank you. That's where I got lost. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. No, that's my fault. It's just I didn't explain that well enough. So thank you for that clarification. And so something to get back to Debbie's point, when we have a strategic plan, we want to avoid just listing day-to-day operations. So for example, if she suggests that the first objective here is already being done. So if that's the case, then we might want to remove it. So, but I'd like to see what other people think.
This is Maria again. I support Debbie. I think that actually implies that consumers or licensees are treated differently. And in my estimation, similar to, I think if I'm repeating what Debbie said, is it doesn't matter in state, out of state, they're treated the same.
Okay. So it looks like we're looking at removing that first objective there. If anyone is opposed to that, please unmute yourself and speak, or else you can raise your hand.
I agree.
I just want to say I agree with them.
Okay, so it looks like we're removing that first one.
I apologize. The remote access is a little slow. I'm trying to select everything.
Yep. Understood.
There we go.
Yep.
Or apparently not. Come on.
It's the objective is resisting you.
Hi, sorry, this is Nicole. I had a quick question. I'm a newer board member, and I kind of came into this process after it was already happening. Are we able to get a little background on where these came from? Like, I guess I'm not understanding where this idea of this being an issue is from. I'm trying to look at the same time at the environmental scan. Was this something that was brought up in there that they felt, and I'm not understanding, are they feeling like there's too many non-resident pharmacies? Like, I'm missing what the issue is on this one.
Okay. So the objectives are meant to address current problems that the board should address, and the board members received the environmental scan ahead of time with the objective worksheet with the idea of writing out objectives, and then some have been sent in, so we just, to save time, pre-populated the PowerPoint with them. But I don't know, maybe the person who created this one would like to speak about where it's coming from to provide you that background.
Right. I'm just missing like what I see what the issue is, but I'm not understanding the context of the issue. I apologize.
Hey,
I can
Nicole,
speak.
it's not you being new. I think that was my point too, is,
Okay.
I
you know,
can speak
are we trying to have only like 80-20? I mean, is that what the goal is here? And I don't think that that's necessary, because I think we currently license and hold all pharmacies to the same
So
requirement.
I can speak to it, Nicole and Debbie. So where this came from is when we were scanning the comments from environmental scan, which is, as you know, it's a very large and long comments. So we just kind of, of the comments filtering through, these are the kind of issues that we came about was what was in those comments. So we were trying to extract out of those environmental scan comments that came to us. And of course, it's a draft of where certain issues, lie, and we can decide today whether we want to push forward or not. So, just because if we were to come up with these now, I think today it would take us 2-3 days. So that's why we kind of start somewhere and then we just go through. And then, like we're doing right now, if we kind of feel like it's good, it's useful as a board, we're going to push forward. If we think it's unnecessary, we can discuss, or we feel like we can adjust as well. So does that kind of make sense, Nicole?
Yes, thank you. I was just not understanding if people were saying there were too many non-resident pharmacies, or there were so many comments in the scan. I was getting confused.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think where that came from was the potential idea that there were a little bit of different standards for resident pharmacies versus non-resident pharmacies. Not the number, not the percentage. Yeah, I think it was just a possibility,
the standard,
that the standards might be a little bit different between the non-resident and resident pharmacies.
Thank you.
I
That
get
helps.
it now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that helps me too, Nicole. It has nothing to do with you being new. I was like going, what?
Yeah. Sung, maybe you can give us a little bit of like a 5-minute background as to, because we kind of jumped from the environmental scan to having this document. How did this document put together, and what was the process that you reviewed it and created these?
Yeah,
to give us a jump.
Right. So where this came from is, as you know, that we were given tasks, Ann and I, we were given tasks to come up with some potential goals in the previous meeting to get the meeting kind of flow through. So we looked at a lot of those comments from the environmental scan report. The goals that were recommended from the environmental scan reports, of course, were not a lot. So we had to kind of look through where we felt it might be relevant for us as a board to set as a new goal for the next 4 or 5 years. Out of the comments from all the stakeholders involved, I know it's very long, as I said. That's why, we were trying to extract some comments that were in there in the areas that licensees, stakeholders, us, board staff, what they were saying, and we were trying to extract out of those 2 sentences that is actionable. So that's where all these come from, is kind of coming from the environmental scan to try to get that to a sentence.
So can you explain the difference between these action items, and then when I look at that environmental scan, they're called objectives? Because but possible licensing objectives are those like under licensing? There's 3 of them. Are those embedded in these somewhere? Because I don't see a relationship.
Yes, good question, Debbie. So those are we can add. So what we wanted to do is, my vision was kind of for us to start here, and where we want to go is to Tricia to bring it up and say any other objectives. Because those were already written out, I didn't think that it was necessary for us to like have it be discussed as a as a objective, because it was already obvious. Those are the objectives that are so obvious that Tricia and the solid team could extract out of. So, and obviously it's just one or 2 to 3 objectives in there. So those are the objectives we can add at the end, and we felt that those were already kind of obvious, so we don't need to discuss through. That's why those are already there. Yeah,
Those are done.
yeah. So they're there. We can definitely add, and we probably will add those objectives. But those objectives, in our perspectives, were a little bit too obvious. So we wanted to come up with, of course, something more dynamic and more useful for us in multi-directional ways to kind of get our discussion going today.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you. That makes sense. So
All right. Thank you for the clarification.
Yeah, I was just going to say the next number, the new number 1. I actually would be. I agree that we do need to reflect the dynamic nature, and there does seem to be some duties that can occur outside the pharmacy. So I would agree. I think what I would kind of pitch to the rest of the board is number 2 even is kind of along that same line, because it's also talking about, I guess number 2 is now talking about changes within the pharmacy practice setting, and number 1 are changes outside the pharmacy setting. And if that's the case, I would be very supportive of both 1 and 2.
Just a little bit insight on the number 1. It is kind of discussing and thinking about remote work.
Yeah.
And then number 2 is what can happen within a pharmacy.
Okay.
So
yep.
That's
got it. I think we do need to that those are good suggestions, and that we should go that direction.
I apologize for the interruption. I think that number 2 also could potentially look at the different types of pharmacy practice settings to determine, if changes are appropriate, for example, a call center versus a mail order, those kinds of things as well.
Okay.
I have a question about number 1, and maybe it's a process. I'm sorry, I get stuck in the process, so I apologize. Is this now just to brainstorm and then we'll flesh it out a little bit later? Because I was confused by that. I didn't realize that was until Sung said it was about remote settings and other practice settings, like number 2 says. Number 1, I started visualizing, well, what can happen outside of a licensed pharmacy, like a CBD clinic, like over the counter, like places. So I was confused by that. Do we flesh that out later, or is that now?
Or do we leave it more general? And
that would be now, because
I see 2 different things. And what Sung was saying was about pharmacy activities that are regulated by the board that happen outside of a licensed pharmacy. That's one thing. The other thing is, what are things that can help complement pharmacy outside of a licensed pharmacy and outside of the purview of the board? And maybe I'm going too deep, but
I think again, I think Tricia probably said at the beginning, I think we just gotta look at it as a very, very broad perspective. So it could probably encompass both perspectives, but that's where, as we delve into the goals, we are reviewing these every year, so we can kind of fine tune it and kind of give direction. So I think this is where we just kind of look at it as a very broad perspective, and we can broaden it out if there is some adjustment could be made on these statements. So I think we should just kind of look at it as a very, very big picture item, just to kind of get where the board wants to go in a big picture. So
because
I don't know if that helps.
I agree with what Song's saying, and I think what we are trying to do is make it big enough, and then you give it to the committee, and the committee can talk it through and figure out, you know, which way to go. But it also needs to be broad enough that, because this is, what is this, like 3 or 4 years? So it needs to give us kind of a bandwidth also for the next 3 or 4 years. And not that we can't change midstream, but I think we don't have to get detailed in our objectives here. And I think that that's what Song's saying. Hopefully I'm not contradicting them.
All right, and then after you approve the strategic plan, it's this board staff that, or they will come up with an action plan that will take a look at each of these objectives and come up with the steps necessary to achieve them. So that's when we'll get into real detail at that time. So it sounds like people agree that with keeping 1 and 2, that's what I'm hearing. So if that's the case, I think we'll go on to the next slide, which has a few more. So I'll just give you a chance, and we can start with the one at the top there. And just let me know if you want to keep it.
So I'll be a little bit the mouthpiece just because I do licensing. I would say number 4 is something that the committee is actively pursuing. So I would think that that is in line with our current objectives, and something that based on our last meeting, the stakeholders I think are very interested in.
Okay. So are you supporting keeping it?
So yeah, I support keeping 4.
Okay. Okay.
Just also just a reminder, we're doing this as a video just so we can kind of discuss this through. If anyone has any comments, so please feel free to just jump right in, and we'll just talk kind of through it. So we're not going formally like one by one. We're just jumping right in and out and just talking it through. So.
Hi, this is Jason. I do support number 4. I have a question about, we have already those 3 licensing objectives that are already in our documents, our background documents. Are all of these prioritized? Is one more significant than 2? And when we add these 3 here, okay, so they're not ranked in any order. Okay, great.
Yes, we just added the numbers so that you could refer to, like, for easy reference, but the numbers don't represent priority, and the board will have, depending on what they choose, between 2 to 5 years to complete the strategic plan. And the goal, of course, would be to achieve all of these objectives in that time frame.
Excellent, thank you.
So Song, for number 5, I know we've wrestled a lot with pharmacists in charge. So I think that this is a good idea that we need to look at the application requirements. I think maybe that is the right way to approach it. But KSA, key.
Oh, sorry. Knowledge, skills, and
Okay.
Abilities, knowledge, skills, and abilities. Yep.
Okay.
Sorry, maybe we should write that out, Trisha. So we're not like using some acronym that is not.
Yes.
You know.
Right. So KSA's knowledge, skills, and abilities.
I agree with everything you're showing there in 4, 5, and 6. Because we're gonna, as far as the pharmacy tech, we have already set up that we're gonna have meetings with our techs throughout the state, correct? As far as that expansion of.
Yeah, that's the plan. You're right, Cheryl, to have the stakeholder meetings and kind of listening meetings to hear what.
Right. All right. So I think, and I really also agree that I like the whole idea of this working with the requirements for pharmacists in charge based on a lot of cases we see that shows that there should be some requirements other than you just want the position.
Okay.
And we certainly need to look into working conditions. So I totally agree with 6. That's my opinion.
All right. So are we ready to look at the last licensing slide?
Go ahead, Tricia.
Okay, thank you. So I'll give you a moment to look at this and just let us know if you want to keep it.
I think we definitely want to keep it, but Anne, I feel like this is like a requirement.
So I think evaluating for compliance with Section 139 is one thing. I think that what this is really talking about is the consideration of the CPJE in light of the audit that OPES is undertaking right now for the MPJE, and looking at that along with the current requirements, statutory requirements in law for examination content. So I think it encompasses a little bit more than assessing for psychometric validity under Section 139.
Okay, and I feel like number 7 is something that we've already kind of agreed that we're moving forward at looking at the MPJE. So I feel very comfortable with 7.
Okay.
But we gotta see what others say, like, Cheryl, other on the board or the committee.
So, Trisha, I'm sorry, I don't mean to hijack the meeting. So now I think this is where now we have already some that we put it out there. We are agreeing kind of in principle of having those. We can now, any more board members want to add anything, and we can also pull from the objectives that is written on the draft environmental report, such as timing and processing time. Now, this is where we can bring it up and add to our list. So anyone have anything that they want to bring it, anyone thought anything through that they wanted to bring upon here? And I'm more than happy to also add those objectives that we have already established from the environmental scan report.
I mean, I agree with you, Son. I think the 3 objectives you've already have listed on the other document, I think those are slam dunks.
And I agree with that, Debbie. And so.
As it's not displayed on the slide, would it be helpful for staff to read those 3 additional items?
Yeah, I was going to ask Sarah and Tricia if you have those. It's under possible licensing objectives in our report.
Yes.
I'm sure you have it.
Yes, I do. So I can read it. So for possible licensing objectives, the first one is decrease licensing processing times to improve customer service and support applicants and licensees. So for my note taker, I'll say that again. Decrease licensing processing times to improve customer service and support applicants and licensees. And again, if we decide you don't want to keep them, we can delete what we wrote. The next suggested objective is streamline the licensing process to improve efficiency and staff performance. And then the third suggested objective is migrate the entire licensing process online to promote timeliness, reduce staff workload, and provide better customer service.
All 3 points are great.
Okay.
Was that better customer service?
Yes, provide better customer service.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Tricia,
So if
I have that document also.
Oh, okay. Great.
Oh, I apologize. That was a question. Do I have that document?
Yes, I'm sorry. Let me email it to you.
Okay,
It's
that
just
way I figure it'd be faster next time.
yes, yes. I'm sorry about that.
No
It's
worries.
yes. Let me email it to you right now.
And then I have a quick question on 7. Do we want to spell out OPES and MPJE?
I think those are more standard.
Yeah, I don't think that's a national acronym, so I don't think that's necessary, Sarah. Thank you for
Okay, I just
asking.
wanted to make sure. Thank you.
All right. So Sarah, I just sent you a copy of what I was reading from. So it sounds like we're in agreement to keep those 3 suggested objectives. Is that correct? Okay, so in that case, it looks like for licensing, you have a total of 9 objectives because we did get rid of 1. So despite the numbering, which is fine. And so now that we've, did anyone have any objectives they wanted to add in addition to what we have?
I wanted to bring something up. I'm not sure licensing is the right place. It's actually kind of a very large objective that I think might overlay several areas. And it's early in the day, and sorry to dump this on everyone, but I kind of wanted to bring up when we look at a lot of things with the board, I find we use a lot of really gendered language, a lot of very binary. We don't talk about our pronouns in these meetings. And I feel like a lot of what we do maybe isn't supportive of like the transgender and non-binary community. When you read the laws, they often say he and she. Where I think this plays into licensing is there a place for preferred names for someone who's going through the transition process to ask them to have to wear an ID with their dead name on it is a safety issue and is really going to turn away transgender patients who are already very skeptical of the medical community as a whole. So I just kind of want to bring that up now, but I think looking at the LGBTQ community in our work today in this part of our strategic plan probably overlays all the sections.
Okay. So in regards to licensing, Nicole, would it be something about updating like the licensing applications?
Yeah, having some kind of a mechanism, and again, I'm totally sure this falls in licensing, but when someone changes their name, like someone gets married, they change their name with the Board of Pharmacy, there kind of needs to be a similar mechanism for someone who is non-binary or transgender to make a name change, but some kind of way that we can do that maybe quickly so that we don't risk someone having to wear a name badge that does not match their gender identity, because that's a safety issue.
I'm sorry to put you on the spot, Anne, but can you kind of help us where you think is gonna, where we can take this on how we can get this objectives? I really like it, Nicole. I agree. So, how we can make this, yeah.
Yeah, I'm almost wondering if we maybe look at it through the lens of either org development or legislation and regulation, because I'm totally hearing what you're saying, Nicole, and I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that that transcends all of the different goal areas. And because there's so many touch points with legislation and trying to transition to gender neutral language, even just within our law, but as well as many of our forms are incorporated by reference in our law. and requirements are there. I'm feeling like maybe it's Legislation and Regulation Committee, but there's also a pretty significant touch point, I think, with organizational development. So I'm sorry that I'm rambling. In my mind, I'm trying to figure out which one it is, because it's not only that, but it's probably also integrating into us as an organization, members, staff alike, right? And how we actually do our communications. So I'm almost wondering, I don't know if I'm breaking a strategic planning rule here, so I'll look to the facilitators, but I'm almost wondering if we could put it in two areas. I'm wondering org development and legislation and regulation. That's my thought.
I agree, and I think that's and just Nicole, I think if you look at our sunset bill, we are definitely heading in that direction. They are really avoiding using those, his or her, instead of using those and then using their. So that's a progress. And if you read our sunset bill, they are making a lot of adjustments already, which is good, which hopefully will be effective soon. But I think we can definitely put it on org development as well as licensing, regular ledge reg. So that probably would be good. We can maybe bring that up on those section, if that's okay.
Yeah, that sounds great. I didn't know where was the right place to put it, because it's one of those things that kind of overlays everything if you're doing it. So perfect. Thank you.
And also when we get into action planning, that could be like including the other goal areas can be part of the action steps. So even though it's under, let's say it falls under ledge reg, if updating licensing applications is one of the action steps to carrying that out, then it would be included there. All right. Any other suggestions for additional objectives before we go to the board president making a motion? Great. I am not hearing anything, so I think we're good with what we have, which is 9 licensing objectives.
All right, Tricia, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna probably, anyone willing to make a motion? We can just, it could be very simple. A motion to approve the goals as displayed and delegate to the board president and staff the authority to make any non-substantive changes to the language.
I can make that motion just as stated.
Thank you, Ricardo. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Ricardo. And so with the motion and second, we are going to open the discussion for public comment. And reminder, we're going to do 3 minutes per commenter. Again, we are very time sensitive, so just make sure that it's a new ideas and new thoughts. But of course, this is the first one, so I don't think we're going to have problems. So if you could just please open the line for public comment, moderator, please.
Thank you. And I am relying on my co-facilitator to open up the Q&A panel, because the way I'm sharing my screen, I don't have access to that. So we'll have her do that. We are displaying instructions. So if anyone wants to comment on the objectives for the licensing goal area, please type. I would like to make a comment using the participation field in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. Submit it to all panelists, and we will give you a moment. All right, so it looks like my co-facilitator is not able to unmute herself.
Oh, I am now. I had to relinquish control of the PowerPoint.
Okay,
in
okay.
order to unmute myself.
Okay.
But it doesn't appear there are any requests for public comment at this point. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Thank you. Yes, please.
Okay.
So with a motion and second and public comment, we're going to do roll call for objectives for licensing as displayed. We're going to start with Ricardo.
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie Veal?
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. Jason Wise.
Yes.
Thank you, Jason. Maria.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jake.
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Cheryl Butler.
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Jose De La Paz.
Yes.
Thank you, Jose. And Shirley Kim.
Yes.
Thank you, Shirley. And I vote yes. The motion for licensing objectives committee goals passes, strategic goals passes. Ms. St. Clair, back to you for enforcement.
Thank you very much. And as we approach 10:30, I just want to check with the participants. Does anyone need a bio break? Do we need to break for 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think a small break would help.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Is 15 minutes okay? Can we do 15 minutes? And we'll just be back
Sounds good.
okay, we'll be back at 10:40.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
It is 10:40, so I'm not sure if everybody's back, but let's turn on the video just as a way to take quorum. I believe this is sufficient to just look at the videos. Just waiting on Debbie and Shirley.
I'm here. I'm back.
Hi, Debbie.
Hello.
Shirley, are you here too? Oh, there you are. Hi, Shirley. Thank you. Okay. All right. Back to you, Tricia. Let's get right back on it.
Thank you. And to give people a reprieve.
Actually,
President
I'll
sorry,
do a
this is
roll call. Yeah, no worries. I got it. I'll do the roll call.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you. Okay, so Maria.
Here, thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Jake.
Here.
Thank you, Jake. Cheryl.
Here.
Thank you, Cheryl. Jose.
Here.
Thank you, Jose and Shirley.
Here.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Here.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole.
Here.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie.
Here.
And Jason. Thank you, Debbie and Jason.
Here.
And I am here. Thank you, Jason. Okay. All right. Back to you.
All right, thank you. And my co-facilitator and I are switching roles. So Sarah Irani will be talking you through this one, and I will be doing any typing that's necessary.
All right. So next we'll be moving on to enforcement. And your summary for that is going to be, oh, okay, we're going to skip that and go straight to the suggested objectives. We have
Sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's okay. The summary is going to be on pages 16 through 17 of your environmental scan, and those survey responses will be on pages 171 to 277. And I'll give you a moment to kind of briefly look those over. And these are the suggested objectives that we have. We can go ahead and start with that first objective, number 1, and see if anyone has any changes or if they're okay with how it's worded.
Sounds good to me.
All right, thank you, Cheryl. I'm not seeing any other hands or unmuted microphones, so I'm going to guess okay to move on to number 2.
My only comment, I agree with Cheryl, this is something we absolutely need to do, is I'm debating, is enforcement the right place for it to be?
And I apologize, Debbie, are we talking about that first objective or the second one?
I'm sorry, number 1.
Number 1, thank you. Okay.
Like I said, I agree with Cheryl's comment. We do need to do this, but I'm just wondering, is enforcement the right committee? Not that I am ready to tell you what committee I think it should be, but I don't know if it's, I mean, is it communication, public ed? Is it, I don't think it's licensing. Maybe enforcement's just where it lands, but anyway, just.
My comment is that I see it in personally, I see it in enforcement, simply because of the fact that when the errors happen and they have to be reported, there is, in filling out the paperwork, there is a place there where there's explanation as to not only that the error was made, but how it was. So I don't know. I personally see it in enforcement.
Yeah,
Thank you,
I
Cheryl.
definitely
That's
agree
good.
too.
Yeah.
Not in communications.
All right, and I apologize. It seems like general consensus is to keep this objective in enforcement.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, and then looking at objective number 2, do we see any changes or kind of okay with it?
I think 2 might need a little bit more clarification, I think. I just reread it, and I think we need to just kind of add a little bit more meat.
All right, do we want to identify specific trends or?
I think I want to just add a little more to benefit.
Okay.
Analyze enforcement outcomes to identify trends, to educate licensees of
Maybe it's to identify, to educate licensees of common violations and improve patient outcomes.
Yes, there you go. Thank you, Anne. Yes.
All right. Do these changes look good to everyone?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Oh, I apologize. That was a yes?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure. So moving on to objective number 3, how do we like this one?
I think it's good.
All right.
I have a question on
I
it though.
apologize.
Says routine inspections of all licensed pharmacies. Do we even have the resources for every pharmacy?
I think,
All
Ricardo,
licensed pharmacies?
our current goal is already to do it every 4 years. I mean, I think our resources are challenged for sure, but it's being I guess audacious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we even have the resources to do that. But I guess we try to get to everybody at least once every 4 years, right?
That's still a challenge. We still don't do that. So I think we need to have better measures, but we can talk about the measures later. But I think this is a requirement.
Yeah.
And I was just going to say, do we actually put in there how often routine inspection of all licensed pharmacies? At least every, and if we think 4 years is too much, we can give us a little wiggle room and say 5 years. But I feel like we need to say at least, so often, because this could mean, every 20 years.
Well, I agree with you, but I'm not sure if it's here, Debbie, because I think that every 4 years is not enough. So I would be adverse to going to beyond 4. But I'm wondering if it even should be here or if it should be someplace else when we talk about the measures and the resources and all of that.
So I think it should be here because we're specifically talking about this, but
then I would advocate for 3 years.
And I would agree to that.
Even
because-
more difficult,
I mean,
but we need the
again,
resources to do that. There are
but I
people
feel
who
like-
haven't, I'm sorry, there are people
Go
who haven't
ahead.
been inspected in more than 10 to 15 years. So, you know, it is something that we really do need to work on.
But I think again, you know, this is a bigger picture, and I mean, I think we need to make sure we are not setting ourselves up for failure because we are already. I mean, this is. I would go as far to say it's an impossible task, but I'm just being very. I think a little bit more realistic. I think it's maybe, you know, a little bit more than 3 years. I think that's just seems.
Well, I'm fine with keeping it at 4. I just would not advocate for extending it because it has gotten better this last year, and it's the only reason it's gotten better. You know, even our facilitators will acknowledge this. The reason it's gotten better is because we look at it, we measure it, and report it, and so that's why it's gotten better.
If we get better at educating the licensees and take certain measures of communicating that to every license holder, pharmacy license, the inspector's job would become a little bit easier. And I think we can accomplish that goal for 3 years. I think we should keep a goal of 3 years and give tool store inspectors to achieve that, where inspection can go down to 30 minutes, 1 hour, depending on the facility. So
I'm just saying, before we do that, can we check with our staff to make sure we have the capabilities to do that? It just, you know, we're talking about a lot of pharmacies here, and 4 years is something that we've been able to deal with. And if we're going to just make it harder on them in light of COVID, you know, I think there's going to be a little too much burden on our staff.
Well, see, and Ricardo, I kind of disagree with that because I think we need to set the goal and then work on getting the resources to achieve that goal. Instead of the other way around, because you know, if that is one of our goals, then it actually puts the onus on us to get the tools and the resources.
But should we take in account to what we're actually successful in right now, which is what we're able to maintain and effectively, you know, review the businesses right now?
Go ahead, Ann.
Right now,
Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Ricardo. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, I was just going to say, right now with 4 years, we appear to be doing well. You know, we're, according to didn't you just say we were doing well with it?
I said we're doing better, but we're not doing well. I think that it has been bad for a long period of time in that we have not been able to get to everyone. And one of the things that Ann and the office is doing this last year is they've really focused on those people who haven't been reviewed in many, many years.
Okay.
But still, it is well beyond 4 years. If we haven't.
So I know we're supposed to do it every 4 years. We haven't been able to get to everybody during those 4 years, is what you're saying, right?
They're working on those people that are beyond 8 years, beyond 10 years right now.
Oh my goodness. Oh no. Okay. I didn't know that. I think then you need the resources for it.
Yeah, let's see what Ann has to say on this, and then let's talk more through after.
Yeah, I would say that this goal, but as well as some of the other goals, they're absolutely resource dependent, right? And, you know, priority dependent. So I would suggest that maybe when we get to the organizational development committee goals, where we really talk about the organization and, you know, resources and those kinds of things, maybe we make sure that we have captured that as a strategic objective in that goal area, because we're going to need resources for many of these different items, right? And so making sure that we drill down in org development to capture that as a need to actually effectuate some of these other goals may be an appropriate approach.
I mean, I think it's as I said, I really don't. You know, I think just arbitrarily saying 3-4 years, I think it just is not accomplish what we are here to accomplish. I think arbitrary numbers doesn't really do anything. I think if anything, we need to focus on pharmacies that have not been inspected. Of course, for that long, we of course need to focus on those, but that seems to be, we can, develop that within our own org development goals or within our enforcement goals later. I just don't feel that having some arbitrary numbers and having to go to each pharmacies who may be doing an excellent job, I don't know how that adds value. If anything, we should focus on, maybe pharmacies that have gotten complaints, and maybe we focus on those every 4 years, every 3 years, every 2 years. Maybe we focus on pharmacies that had prior citations and give them more thorough inspections. I think it's just doesn't seem like we are using our resources right if we just set 4 years, 3 years, and say that has to be done. I don't know how that really adds value, and I think that just wastes inspectors' precious time. They're already stretched extremely thin. I just think that we gotta kind of think bigger and think through. And when we set these strategic goals, I think that might be too shallow and narrow. So I just don't know if we should put any specific numbers, but that's just my thoughts.
Yeah, but what I'm hearing is resources versus goals, right? I think from a board perspective, we should focus, I believe, on the goal, what do we want to achieve? And then of course follow up with, how do we achieve that? What are the risks to achieve that goal? But I think the directive should be set by us. And if we feel that, from a consumer, protection, view, if 3-4 years visiting every pharmacy is the goal, then I think we should, document it and then put that as the priority for staff to try to achieve that goal. Because the other risk is if we do not, put a year attached to this goal, then we just continue to float around and say, yeah, well, we're doing better, but what is that goal that everyone should be looking to achieve, and what are the resources that we need to allocate to achieve that? Just my personal opinion.
So, I want to comment on what Sung said, because I think we have maybe a difference of opinion that we probably should flesh out a little bit more. One is, I agree with Sung about the prioritizing those that have complaints, prioritizing those that are previously under investigation, prioritizing those. But I still think that there needs to be a routine inspection for every pharmacy during some interval, that everyone, and that interval needs to be short enough such that we provide safety for the patients in the community out there. And keep in mind, we're talking about not all license categories, because right now, sterile license compounding facilities, those are required to be inspected every year. So that is happening in one license category. This is a little bit different, because we're looking at, and maybe Ann can speak to some of the zebras that are out there, but there are retail, ambulatory, different types of pharmacies out there that have not been inspected in significant periods of time. And as we find some of these, we find that they're practicing to the level of what it was 10, 15 years ago. So I would think that we need to have some benchmark of routine, and then maybe discuss that amount of time. Sorry, I was a little long there.
I like to give my opinion on this also. I like the idea that every pharmacy is inspected, and that every time an inspector walks in a pharmacy, it's not punitive, that that they can actually go in and then when you think about some pharmacies that haven't been inspected, because you didn't get a complaint doesn't mean that everything is going all right there. So I do believe that it's necessary to have routine inspections of all licensed pharmacists, and I think we should leave it at and have a goal of 4 years at least. So that's my opinion. And again, like we aren't achieving the goal now, but this is the whole reason why we're doing what we're doing right now is to set goals, and to try and go for those goals. We may or we may not achieve them, but we can at least have that as a goal.
I just wanted to jump in here. Often with, strategic goals at this level, we're looking at a 30,000-foot view. So we want to get something down that gets the nature of what we're trying to do, but we can put the specifics later. And we almost want to leave it broad enough to give ourselves that leeway, because maybe we do want to do a shorter period for a pharmacy that's had multiple complaints. Maybe we do want to delineate more within that. So I think if we don't put the specifics here, that gives us room to get more specific, also gives us a little bit of room to be creative. Does this routine inspection have to be a board inspector? Can we come up with a program later that allows pharmacies to inspect each other as an audit, to help each other out? Like, there's a lot of creative solutions here. We don't want to paint ourselves into a corner. So I almost advocate leave it broad. And then when we're working with the enforcement group, we can become really specific.
So I think we have a little bit of disagreement, obviously. So, I mean, I think we can, we instead of just talking it through, we can kind of vote to see where we are. I don't know if that's possible, Tricia or Eileen. I don't know if that's, a possibility, but we can just, I guess if we vote, that means we might have to separate out the motion. So I don't want to kind of cause confusion to the process, but let's
I would
just
maybe suggest.
Yeah, go ahead, Anne.
I would maybe just suggest doing a quick little roll call straw poll just to kind of get a pulse of all of the members.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'll just start with Maria. What are your thoughts? You want to keep the number, right?
I was not adverse to not having a number here, but having it be further in the details later. So I would go with the group as to either having a number, or if we pick one, to leave it at 4.
Sounds good. And Jig, what are your thoughts?
I'll keep it at 4.
Okay, Jig wants to keep the number. And Cheryl?
I like to keep it at 4.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Cheryl. Jose, you want to keep the numbers as well, right?
Well, yeah, my preference would be to have a number, defined. So 4 would be, I think, the number I would be comfortable with. Yeah, keeping it too broad probably I would lean, no on that, but I think, 4
Okay.
is well defined.
Sounds good. Shirley, what are your thoughts?
I'm wondering if we can kind of strike some sort of compromise that suggests that we would adjust the period of time commensurate with the level of risk to public safety. So we can kind of signal that we want to limit the time or do more routine, more frequent checks where there are bigger risks to public safety when we actually implement. So if not, then I'm fine with 4 years.
Okay. Ricardo?
Maria had some good points there. I'm good with 4 years. The only concern I had was the resources for it, and I'm talking from a background as a state investigator who enforces and does administrative and criminal cases with licensees, and I was looking at it from that point of view. That's basically it. But 4 years is good.
Sounds good. Ricardo, Nicole?
I'm advocating for not having a specific number at this point, but coming up with a specific number or plan at a later state that can give us more flexibility.
Sounds good. Debbie?
As part of our goal, I think we want to have a specific, we want to have a number in there.
Okay. And Jason?
I am good with a target. 4 is fine with me. As long as it does not infringe on prioritizing pharmacies that really should be inspected or have a higher level of review.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like we're wanting to kind of put some numbers. So it seems like we're wanting to put 4. So is that agreeable to everybody? Okay, that sounds good. Sorry, didn't mean to hijack here, Sarah. Go ahead, take it back.
Oh, you are completely okay. It seemed like everyone was able to figure it out, so I didn't have to interject at any point. I will say though, it does seem to be there's a little bit confusion between goals and objectives, and I'd like to clarify the difference between those. So your goals are kind of like it's the licensing, it's enforcement, the organizational development, and those are like broad statements about what you want to achieve with your program. Whereas your objectives, which is what we're creating today, these are going to be a lot more specific and quantitative and measurable. And they're going to kind of be those SMART objectives. They're going to be measurable, they're going to be specific, time-based, etc. So that's just a little bit of difference between what is the goal area and then what is the objective. Okay, so next we'll move, so now that we're done with number 3, we'll move on to objective number 4. And do we have any comments on this one? Does everyone seem agreeable to this one?
I'm agreeable. Is it too broad?
Trying to figure out what the barriers to timely investigations.
Yeah, I mean,
barriers.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Ricardo. Like, what kind of barriers, and do we need to define what timely is?
Yeah.
I think the timely is the 4 years that, if your timely investigations, maybe is it inspections or is it investigate? I guess it's investigations. Yeah, it needs to be defined if it's timely.
Is it administratively or is it criminal too?
Well, I was thinking, when we have like those cases, I guess that's where I was going, is with the cases, we always like to say within 18 months that a person, it's identified, investigate, that we get a resolution because we are trying to improve, protect the consumer. So I think it's different than the inspections up above. I think these are I'm thinking these are more the cases, but I don't know, Song, if you have any insight. Are we talking about enforcement cases or are we talking about inspections here?
We need
Yeah,
clarification.
President, if you could, maybe provide some background on, any barriers that have been there previously in being able to investigate timely anything that's come before us.
Well, I think so. This is it's stated very simply, but it is, of course, a very, very complex issue involving Attorney General. So I think we are talking about more of an investigation, as in not inspections, but as in what happens after something gets maybe referred to Attorney General's office or in between citations, and to resolve a potential violation. So that is where we are trying to figure out a way to reduce the time it takes for someone to get some sort of resolution if they potentially got in trouble. How do we make it so that what causes all the time that it takes? Because right now it takes, as you all know, quite a while for the investigations to be resolved for anyone who might have violated a pharmacy law or some sort of regulation. So I think our intent on this one was to say, figure out what is the reason why it takes longer than where we want it to be, and and figure out, is there a way we can do what we can do to reduce that time so that, you know, a licensee who might have gotten in trouble is not just waiting for 18 months, 24 months to get the resolution of it. So I don't know if that makes sense.
So I would suggest changing the words then, because it's not really the investigation that is the delay, it's the timely completion of disciplinary cases. And I would be okay with changing the word. I wasn't quite sure of disciplinary cases, but I think that's where you're going. And maybe that's not the right word, but has to do with completion. It's not the investigation, but the actual case itself. Right?
I think, yeah, and I think most cases, if I'm correct here, Maria, and talking to our chief investigator there, most cases are filed not only administratively, but they're also filed criminally, some of them, because I had asked a question about, do we forward those to be prosecuted in whatever county they were committed? I know we file them federally, okay? They only take a couple, and I don't think we've had too many actual filings at that level. But I think the administrative part of filing a case, you know, those drag out and you don't have much control over those. So you have two-pronged here as far as it being a case coming to a timely completion.
Go ahead, Anne.
What I would say is, if the board is agreeable, maybe removing disciplinary. So we find a lot of, so an example of a barrier at the investigation level is trying to get the arrest records or the court documents from another agency, or trying to get the records that are actually necessary from the pharmacy or the corporate player or whatever else. So there are barriers that happen during the investigation stage, as well as some barriers when we are going to final case resolution, whatever that case may be. And I think when our goal is improved consumer protection, I would maybe recommend that we maybe allow it to be a little more broader than just the disciplinary cases, but really trying to get to what are the causes of, you know, of the untimeliness, whether it's in our court or outside of our court, and then how do we address them, because we do want to get to quicker case resolution times. Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
I think also the statute of limitation would run out on some of them if they're, especially their misdemeanor type stuff. So, and if they're taking longer than 2 years or a year and a half, you know, you could hit that threshold. Something to consider. I don't know.
Well, why don't we use the same words that Anne just used? Case resolution. That's, is that broad enough?
Yes, I think that sounds good.
Okay, so we're going to add case resolution to the issue. And if I might make one suggestion for the action, having it be determine and reduce, because ultimately you do want to reduce those case timelines and those barriers.
Agreeable. That sounds good.
All right, any other comments on objective number 4? All right, so in that case, we'll move on to our last one, number 5.
This one, I'm kind of curious to hear from Eileen and from Anne, because the standard of care model is currently undergoing legislative review, and it may become a requirement. So are we saying that if the legislation does not pass, that we would still take on this project on our own?
I don't know, like if I...
And just jump right in. You don't have to wait for us. Just jump right in. No need to raise hands.
Okay, so under the provisions of AB 1533, that is, it's our board sunset bill, there is a provision that would require the board to convene a work group on standard of care. It doesn't require us to transition to standard of care. It requires the board to evaluate, to develop this work group and then report back to the legislature. So this is maybe a little more global than perhaps the legislation itself. And I think envisions perhaps a more end-to-end implementation after assessment if it's deemed appropriate.
So Anne, maybe you can help us with the issue part, because I see that in the action that says if appropriate. That makes me feel a little bit better. Can we put some sort of comment like that in the issue so that it doesn't seem like that is the complete and final goal? Some if appropriate kind of language.
I think I probably need to think about that. I mean, the only thing that I can come up with right away is maybe instead of it's adding in where appropriate here, because what we may decide through the process, right? We already used, sorry if I'm going a little rabbit hole-ish here, but we already use standard of care, like in correspondent responsibility cases, those kinds of things. So I think part of the assessment is where do we land on it? Are we implementing more or whatever? And so part of that will be through the legislative process and then the policy discussion. So I think that the further use, Maria, maybe indicates that it may, it may not be a full transition to it. I think with the further, maybe we're getting to kind of what you're trying to get to, where it's recognizing that there is already some use of it, and is there an opportunity to further modify, how we approach this kind of regulation. Sorry, I'm not being helpful. I apologize.
This is Eileen. I was just wondering whether under the action, whether transition should be changed maybe to something else, because I don't think we can fully transition to this without any type of legislative change. I don't know if that would help Dr. Serpa's thing, but maybe assessed and transition seems to me like we have full control over that and we don't. And oh, I like that.
Right. So my co-facilitators added pursue instead of transition. Does that seem okay? Not seeing any hands raised or unmuted mics. So I think we're good. All right, and then there were 3 suggested objectives in the environmental scan. I wanted to ask if any of the board members want to include those here.
Would it be helpful to the members if someone went ahead and read them?
I would like to see all 3 added.
Okay, so Tricia will go ahead and put those in.
I agree with Cheryl.
As you're typing out that one, I'm wondering where it says to improve compliance and support of licensees, whether we should include something about patients in there too. Patient safety. Because it's compliance implies it's for patient safety, maybe? Is that, what does the group think?
I think that's a good point.
I agree.
We could add
compliance and patient safety.
Or patient care.
No, I'd leave that. Supportive licensees, I think, is a different concept. I think that is actually an interesting twist that we need to put in writing. I think we talk about it a lot, but we need to put it in writing.
Okay, so we have improved compliance, support licensees, and patient care.
I'm not quite sure of the order or the wording. What does the group think?
I think that's in the right order.
It needs another word before patient care. It's either improve compliance and patient care and support licensees, or you need to put the word improve again before patient care. Yeah, further is good. Yeah.
Okay. And then that second one is write a BCP to increase the number of enforcement staff to ensure more regular investigations and improve case processing times.
Sorry, what is a BCP?
I believe it's budget change proposal in this case.
Okay.
Maybe you should put
Nicole?
that in, because in the medical field, I think of birth control pills.
Nicole, that's the process that we go through to request additional staff and secure additional budget authority.
Thank you. I was right with Maria on that one. I was like, birth control pills.
Sorry, I think I was saying something about BCP and I think I was muted. So sorry, Nicole. But yes, I'm glad you brought it up. I was going to say that we need to write out BCP. So yeah, I'm glad. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Not birth control pills.
But the state BCP can also stand for business continuity plan. So it's good that we wrote that out.
There you go.
Sorry, I know I keep raising my hand, so I apologize. It's a habit. Could we also, would the board be agreeable to adding in regular inspections, investigations, and improved case processing time?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, and that last one is going to be educate licensees about enforcement to prevent violations and build relationships.
The word violations just seems so strong. I'm wondering if there was another word that we could use there.
To improve compliance.
I like that.
Okay, so we'll take out prevent violations and put improve compliance.
Can we say something about educating very clearly? I don't know where the clearly would fall under, but I don't know if we can educate clearly to licensees about enforcement to improve. Sorry, that's just a lot of words, but
I'm also wondering, on the previous slide, we have already kind of some of the essence of some of this, and I'm wondering if it makes sense to blend the two together, or if we want to keep them as separate objectives.
Are we going to have another opportunity to review them as a total to see if they are similar in tone, or is this the only time?
I think this is the only time, Maria. So let's.
So before we do that, can we? Because I agree with Anne that the last one, but maybe it is licensees about enforcement responsibilities. What do you think about that word?
I'm okay with that. That sounds good.
Okay.
I mean, I can see how number 6 and 8 kind of sounds similar, but I think it has its own merits. so I am okay leaving them alone.
I think it was like number 1, perhaps. It's hard to see because they're on different pages.
Oh yeah, what was
Whether
number 1?
any of the first pages are relate to the second pages. I'd like to call that out separately. I think that that looks good there. Anne, did you see something else that you thought could be merged together?
I was thinking about number 2 on the previous slide, but I think how we've changed it, I think it's good.
Can we look at number 2? Okay, enforce. I think it can stand on its own. I'm curious what others' thoughts are.
I'm okay with it standing on its own.
We seem to have consensus.
I'm going to ask a controversial question about an addition, or is that the next phase? Sorry if I'm jumping the gun.
Oh, yes, that would be the next phase if you want to add any other objectives.
I'm not sure if it fits here, but I'm not, and it's something that we probably need to flesh out quite a bit. But the issue is the medication used in locations that are not regulated by the Board of Pharmacy. Let me just throw that out there, and I'll wait for someone to comment on that.
I actually strongly support. Well, I think if I'm understanding you correctly, Maria, I think you're potentially discussing maybe where we should have some jurisdiction, but we don't. Is that where you're going, or are you more talking about like something else?
Well, there's 2 issues. There's the one that you're talking about, which is places that are not under the Board of Pharmacy because there are no pharmacists there and they're under the purview of a physician practice.
Like
That's one
physicians
issue.
mass compounding, right? Yeah.
So that's one issue, and that's okay. But then the other issue that's related but different is that we have pharmacists practicing in non-licensed pharmacies, and there is some confusion because we regulate the practitioner but not what they do in that space.
What would be a non-licensed pharmacy?
So we have, I understand, pharmacists who are working in physician licensed locations like ambulatory, even surgery centers are now starting to hire pharmacists, and they do not have a licensed drug room or a clinic license per se. They could, depending on how they're licensed, but that's the situation. I know we were going to talk about this a little bit more in an enforcement committee, and I'm thinking since we're going to talk about it in an enforcement committee, should that be a global goal rather than getting into the weeds?
I think we should have a global goal. I do think we should have this as a global goal somehow. I think we need to discuss this.
But I think that the issue there may be broad enough, but I don't want it to cause a target because it's not like we're trying to go after or regulate physicians. That's not the purpose and that's not the role of the board. So I don't want any other regulatory body to think that we're trying to step on their toes. This is also similar to veterinarians. We're not trying to step on the veterinary board's toes. This is more about pharmacists practicing in these environments. I'll just leave it at that. So I don't know how to make it broad enough.
Well, so wasn't that one of the action items we had in licensing about pharmacists practicing outside of a licensed pharmacy?
That's a little bit different because I think that I see that as what we currently have is that a pharmacist can practice pharmacy outside of a licensed pharmacy. They can do all the clinical, do consultation, all such other stuff. This is a little bit different, and now that we have pharmacists who are actually dealing with medications And I'm not using the word dispensing because they're not purchasing, but they're actually touching the medication product outside of a licensed pharmacy. So they're like assisting the physicians and their practices. But because it's not a licensed pharmacy, they don't have to necessarily follow all the same laws.
So I'm actually gonna throw it out there. I feel like as a board, in a way, thinking futuristically, I feel like I do want to support the concept of a pharmacist being able to practice on their own. So,
Yeah.
you know, I think the days of pharmacists having to be in a box pharmacy, I think I want to move forward from there somehow. So, you know,
I
whatever
totally agree. We already have that. So that's not the issue. The issue is when they're starting to dispense medications outside of a licensed pharmacy. So it's the product, not the, and actually manipulating the product, not the actual content. Or, you know, pharmacists can practice outside of a licensed pharmacy, but they shouldn't be dispensing drugs nor manipulating drugs outside of a licensed pharmacy, is my point.
Do they not?
That's not the right word. Sorry. Anne, do you have an idea of how to word it? I don't want to get too broad that it causes a lot of heartburn.
Yeah, I think that the issue is maybe assessing the pharmacist involvement in medication delivery used in locations not regulated by the board. How about something along those lines? Does that capture kind of what you're looking for?
Yes. Because it's all about the pharmacist, it's not about the location per se.
And Sarah, yeah, it was delivery in locations outside. Yeah, okay. Medications outside.
And it's not just delivery, it's medication manipulation.
Handling, maybe?
Handling, okay.
So Maria, what you're saying is that there are clinics maybe, or I'm just trying to, it's easier because if I'm trying to actually visualize what's happened, like you're saying there are clinics that may be using pharmacists to dispense medication, but they're not licensed pharmacies under the Board of Pharmacies. Is that?
That's one example.
Okay.
And then what is our
might
benefit
recommend,
here?
Sorry, really fast on this. I think we need to not limit it to outside of licensed pharmacies because pharmacists actually already are involved in medication. So I think it needs to be back to that original language that was outside of locations under the board's jurisdiction or something like that. I think licensed pharmacies was a little too narrow.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I would argue that I think that the benefit, Maria, sorry, not trying to talk for you, is to the benefit of patient safety.
Yes.
Yes, definitely patient safety. Locations not regulated, or I liked what you said, and jurisdiction of the board. Is regulation jurisdiction in your mind? I feel like I think Maria's trying to get broad, and I feel like jurisdiction might be a little broader than regulation.
But if we say jurisdiction, it just automatically seems like we're trying to go into someone else's swim lane that we are not supposed to.
Well, it's not the swim lane that we're going to, it's the pharmacist who's in there that we're concerned about, not the location per se, is at least where I'm trying to go towards. So, it's hard not to give in a specific example, but there are examples out there where there are pharmacists who are practicing like in sterile compounding or in prescription furnishing, medication furnishing, so use the right word, that are not happening in licensed locations. The pharmacist is licensed, thus the pharmacist is saying they don't need to follow all the rules because they're not in a licensed pharmacy. That's kind of getting into the weeds, if that helps to see where I'm trying to go.
So is the action really assess pharmacist involvement and then the issue, or maybe not?
So the issue is patient safety, but it's also inconsistent behavior. So if I'm working in Dr. Smith's office across the street, I do one thing, but if I go to the pharmacy, I have to do something else because the board regulations require me to do something else in that space that just happens to be a licensed pharmacy and the other one's not. So I don't do any documentation per se, or I don't do recalls, or lots of stuff.
All right. Trisha added to that benefit and standardized care. Does that sound like that kind of captures what we're going for? Seeing some head nods.
I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and then she put those two phrases, jurisdiction and then not regulated in parentheses. I'm not sure if we want to determine which of those we like better or do that offline after the meeting.
I feel like that's not non-substantive enough, so we might need to try to decide, but
Okay.
I don't know if this is possible, but I can foresee we're gonna hear some public comments on our discussion on this one. So maybe we can go with the motion of, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to cut it off, but maybe we can try to go for the motion and then hear, and then we can go back.
So Sung, I'd just like to make one suggestion before we move forward, is I'd like to take out the words delivery and. I think that just is not helpful, and it
medication handling. Okay, that sounds good. Yeah.
So Sung, if there's going to be a motion, I think for it to be specific enough, we may need to pick one. If you're going to do public comment, if you want to do public comment twice, then I think you could, maybe make, pick if you want to. But I think probably better to refine the language in advance if you can.
Okay, let's pick one. Let's just go around. If anybody has preference, we're all trying to be democratic. So, Maria, your preference?
I'm not sure if there's a distinction in the legal terms. It might be an Eileen question, but to the layperson, the non-lawyer person of me, I think I like non-regulated. That seems to be more clear to me as a licensee.
Eileen, do you have some comments for us?
No, not really. But if you're going to go with that one, then we have outside of locations. Would we just say handling in locations not regulated by the Board of Pharmacy? Or you could just say out. It's just the word outside is hanging me up if you go with the one you suggested, Maria.
Well, actually, I think, aren't you, Eileen, we probably want outside removed in either case, don't we? That's a good point.
I think we probably do, Debbie. Or how about we say the pharmacist involvement in medication handling, I think Maria or somebody said in unlicensed locations.
That might be best, actually. That sounds to me as a good consensus.
I think that we're circling back to the staying away from license.
Oh, okay. So
we're just saying in locations, and then the rest of it is up for discussion.
Okay, in locations, and then that fixes either one, whichever one you want to go with.
I think if you were going with number one, you would need to add in not under the jurisdiction.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Anne. I was gonna say, I think. Okay, Maria. So you prefer not regulated. Jig, what are your thoughts? Do you care? Do you think it makes? You could just say I don't care too. That.
I'll pick one. How about that? Make it easy.
Okay.
Not regulated.
Okay, sounds good. What do you think, Cheryl?
I'm good with not regulated.
Okay. How about you, Jose?
I'm good with the current language, not regulated there.
Okay. Shirley, do you have preference? Any comments?
Not regulated works for me.
Okay. And Ricardo?
Yeah, I'm also fine with that.
Okay. All right. Nicole?
Not regulated.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Debbie?
Not regulated is fine with me if the lawyers don't care.
All right, Jason?
I'm actually ambivalent some.
Okay, I am with you, Jason. I think on this one, I'm okay. So let's put not regulated and use that as a motion.
Okay, so we'll take out jurisdiction and then have it be not regulated by the Board of Pharmacy?
Yes, please. Uh-huh.
All right. Okay, and then just want to double check that before we go to motion everything, there weren't any other objectives that we wanted to add, correct?
Let's go and make sure anyone else have anything that they want to add?
I have a question for Anne. Sorry, this is my committee, so I'm in the weeds in this one. We're going to be doing a lot of work on harmonizing USP. Is that something that should be in this somewhere, or is that I was going to say implicated? That's not the right word. Is that covered under another item?
Yeah, so we do have the statutory requirement to evaluate our laws 90 days after, changes to USP. We could cover it under that, but we could absolutely perform a strategic objective as well. I don't think that we've covered compounding.
So if the group is amenable, I would certainly like to put something special, another line, not just be under the greater regulatory and legal requirements, because one of the issues we have with our licensees is the request to harmonize not only the language, but the timing, so that we are consistent in what the practice will require. So now you're asking me what's the word you want to write down.
All right, so we have promote consistency and compounding.
I'll throw out some things. I'm just brainstorming. Assuring regulations harmonize with federal regulations and standards. I don't know, because some of them are standards and not regulations. Help me, Anne. You always are really good at this stuff.
Yeah, I think I would, assuring might be a little bit strong, because I think that, some of the pressure points with some of the with some stakeholders is that they don't necessarily want them to harmonize with some of them. So I would maybe suggest that it be assessing, I know assess is probably the wrong word, but something so that we have a deliberate decision point where we're not maybe going to harmonize.
Yeah, so that's the important thing, is that we would harmonize on the basic minimal, but California may have additional. Certainly California would never have lesser than federal. How about regulations harmonized with federal regulations and standards? And because I think we need to, and we have to put some sort of and in there. And additional.
How would you feel about?
Go ahead.
I was going to say in standards governing the practice of compounding.
There, that sounds good.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I'm suggesting after standards, say governing the practice of compounding.
So now I just want to include something in here, Anne, that doesn't make it limited. Harmonize somewhere where we're allowed to do more than just harmonize. I don't want it to be limited to just harmonizing. Maybe the word harmonize means doesn't mean limited to the.
Well, and I think where it says pursue if appropriate, harmonizing with, so it may not always be appropriate to harmonize, or do you feel comfortable with that?
I see what you're saying. Okay, is that going to be, as long as the rest of the board reads out that way? We just don't want to paint ourselves into a box, because there are people who are very much opposed to any California specific regulations. They think that we should limit our scope to just what the federal regulations are and stop there. And that's not what the board believes.
So I'm just going to throw out another word, Maria, and if it's not appropriate, then you can tell me. Instead of harmonize, is align, is that too restrictive?
Unless we use the word something, say when possible. You said if appropriate on the other side. So is the issue pursue if appropriate?
That's what I was gonna
I'm
say.
okay with a line. I think harmonize may be too broad. It may mean different things. I don't have a thesaurus to tell me what it actually means. A line sounds good.
There you go. Bring into line, make straight, make parallel, make even. Support. Oof, I don't know if you want support. Do the same thing with harmonize. What's the thesaurus for harmonize? Match, blend, go with, synchronize.
I think a line looks good. It seems like it's
Okay, we'll keep a line.
because that doesn't limit. It just means that we would not have something so totally different that you'd have to do two things, is how I would read that.
Yeah.
And then before I move to benefit, I just want to quickly ask, does this belong in enforcement or does it belong in legislation regulation?
So Sarah, sorry, this is Anne.
Mm-hmm.
So the enforcement committee is also charged with evaluating compounding. And I think that that's why it is aligned here.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Good question, because it is confusing. And this is all, it's about patient safety. And I think another benefit that we need to include is our goal really is first of all, patient safety, but also to make the practice of compounding not so onerous that pharmacists can't provide medications to patients. So I think we need to include something about the benefit to the licensee also. How about assist?
And assist licensees?
It's not necessarily providing medications. I said that, I know, but that's not what I meant. So sorry. But to assist licensees in
Complying.
Yeah, that's a good word too. I'm trying to think of it in
Complying with the
what's what
with the standards of compounding. Does that work, Maria?
It seems a little bit wordy, but I'm not sure about the word complying. Can you thesaurus that one too? Sorry, we weren't supposed to wordsmith, were we? Sorry about that. Fulfilling.
This is Tricia. What if you just had it say to ensure patient safety and assist licensees with compounding?
You could even just say with standards.
Okay.
Why repeat everything? And see if that works. Is that enough if you were to read it as an outside point of view?
Well, we are going to give the president and Ann the ability to
Okay.
modify this, so we probably don't have to make it word perfect.
Okay. In that case, do we feel ready to move on either to creating other objectives or going to that motion?
I think 10 is plenty. I mean, I'm not trying to cut everybody off, but again, you know, we're very being ambitious. So
Yeah, typically strategic plans have 3 to 6 objectives. Is that correct, Tricia?
of course, the Board of Pharmacy has to be special. So we're
Right.
gonna.
Yeah, usually you want to aim for 3 to 6 objectives per goal area. Of course, you can have more than that, but yes.
So are we in agreement that we're ready to move on to the motion and go from there? Okay, sounds good. So anyone willing to make a motion? Just to say, I can just go for it. Make a motion to approve the goals as displayed and delegate to the board president and staff the authority to make any non-substantive changes to the language. Anyone willing to second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Jig. And we are going to open the line for public comments.
All right, so at the direction of the board, I've opened up that Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And it looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as, 2. I'll go in the order that they're received. So first we'll be starting with Danny Martinez. Danny, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I'm going to request to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you. Danny Martinez with the California Pharmacists Association. Good afternoon, almost to the board. Couple of comments that I want to make. Going back to the inspection of the pharmacies, one suggestion I'd like to make is because board member Serpa's point about some pharmacies that haven't been inspected in years, in addition to prioritizing those who've had issues with the board, maybe also prioritize those particular pharmacies that haven't been inspected in the X number of years, and prioritize sending an inspection team to them. Because I will tell you, I've had pharmacist members of ours who've been inspected up to 3 times in the same year, just for various reasons. So that's one suggestion I'd like to make to see if the board would like to focus on that. We definitely want improved communication between the board and the licensees about what's expected of them in terms of what needs to be followed in terms of regulations. We don't want pharmacies guessing as to what needs to be followed, and don't want to guess what inspectors are thinking. So a little bit more clear and improved communication there. One concern regarding the goal that was mentioned in terms of the pharmacies being, or the pharmacists being outside of the regulatory jurisdiction of the board. I guess I'm confused because I believe, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, the individual license of a pharmacist is still regulated. So even though a pharmacist is not practicing per se in a pharmacy, the activities that they do outside of a licensed pharmacy are still regulated by virtue of their individual license. So I would just ask the board to consider that before moving into an area that I would frankly consider Pandora's box, where you are now moving to potentially another swimming lane, as has been stated in the past, and potentially open up a can of worms that you may not be able to put back in. And so I would ask that you assess that ability to achieve that goal via the current individual license that currently exists. Last thing I want to mention does relate to the compounding. And I just want to say, I know that we've been back and forth with, board member Serpa, the chair of the Compounding Enforcement Committee, on several compounding items. I do really want to emphasize there is a huge concern with different standards that exists. And what I mean by that is that if there's a standard that the FDA has given the green light to, and in terms of it being safe, in terms of it being allowed,
10 seconds.
and the board making an active or passive effort to either discourage that creates different standards. So I know my time's up, and 3 minutes never seems like it's enough, but I just wanted to make those comments. Thank you.
All right, and we will move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Stephen Gray, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 10-second warning. I'll request to unmute your microphone now. Stephen, when the prompt comes up on your device, you'll need to click that unmute me button. So I'm going to request to unmute you one more time. It appears that Stephen is not clicking that unmute me button. So unfortunately, we cannot hear his comment. Board President, how would you like me to proceed?
Are we having, Stephen, what's the issue? Just wanting to make sure that we open up for everyone who wants to speak. So I don't know if he can type on there or however way, just we'll give him a little bit another chance.
Sure. Stephen, I'll request to unmute your microphone again. Please click that unmute me button when the prompt comes up on your device. Oh, and now you are unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. It kept saying, by the way, that I could not unmute myself, and it wouldn't say anything else, but I'll go ahead. A couple of quick comments, and thank you for the opportunity. I think that the inspector, board member Kim made a very good point when we were talking about the inspection of pharmacies and how often they should be inspected. I think it's very important to consider the danger to the public specifically for the past and current practices. Not only are pharmacies not inspected, many of them, as mentioned, every 4 years, or some of them in many times, but there's no prior inspection before they get their license. And in the past, board members and board presidents, John Jones and others, have said that there's a problem out there that the lack of a pre-inspection is causing, where entities can get a Board of Pharmacy license, can use that license to get a DEA number or establish accounts with wholesalers, order drugs, and they can do that for months before anyone ever catches on that they're ordering dangerous drugs and even controlled substances. And then they close up, they go away, etc. They also use that to get billing codes and billing numbers, and they submit lots of billings to PBMs, to Part D programs and others using that information. So I think it's very important for the board to consider not only how often, but how long it is before they are inspected, either a pre-inspection or an inspection time within X number of months that they get their license. There are entities that never opened a physical facility, but they still got a license. I know the board has been trying to deal with this, and I applaud their efforts, but I think that that's open for discussion and is a very serious danger to the public and patients if these entities can get a license and do what I said during that period of time. And I also think that the goals should be aspirational. So if we if the public is not being well served by a goal of every 4 years, then the goal should be to go to something less, whether it's 3 years, 2 years, and then to work to get the resources. And I think if the public knew about how often pharmacies are not inspected, I remember at one public meeting, the president of the Board of Pharmacy during a discussion said, gee, he had several pharmacies that had not been inspected in 7 years. So that was from a board president. So I think that
10
history
seconds.
should be relevant to some of the discussion. Thank you.
All right. It appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you, Sarah.
All right.
And with the public comment, any board member have any suggestions or any changes or comments? If not, we can move forward.
Sung, I just wanted to comment on what Stephen Gray had to say.
Yeah.
You know, I agree that there should be some reasonable time within after the license is given or before the license is even permitted and issued, that a board inspector visits that premise to ensure the location, etc.
Okay, thank you, Jake. Anyone else?
I just don't know. Is this a prevalent issue that is happening, these fraudulent pharmacies? I don't know the degree of this being a problem. If someone could help me, Anne.
And yeah, go ahead, Anne.
I do think that we find it sometimes the board does have the authority under 4312 to cancel the license of a pharmacy that has not been operational. I believe it's for 1 calendar day and a week during the first 120 days. We don't typically find that through inspection, but sometimes that is how we find it. So it is an authority that we do have. There are notice requirements and everything else in it. With respect to the fraud itself, I think that you all have seen cases that involve perhaps fraudulent billing, and what you may find is that it's not necessarily always within the first 120 days that it's operational. Is it a risk? Absolutely. Does the board, want us to redirect staff to do that? That's absolutely, direction that you could look forward, that the staff could look forward to. But I think when you look at the cases that you find with fraud, you may not see it necessarily always happening in that front end licensure period.
Does that help, Jason? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Anne. I think that is very helpful.
Awesome. All right. So we are going to take a vote. Let's start with Mr. Ricardo.
Yes.
Thank you, Ricardo. Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you, Nicole. Debbie?
Yes.
Thank you, Debbie. Jason?
Yes.
Thank you, Jason. Maria?
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. Jake?
Yes.
Thank you, Jake. Cheryl?
Yes.
Thank you, Cheryl. Jose?
Yes.
And thank you, Jose and Shirley.
Yes.
Thank you, Shirley, and I vote yes. The motion passes. We are on to the next, but of course it's 12:02, so we will take a lunch break. Is hour sufficient or 45 minutes? What do you prefer?
An hour I would need.
Okay. All right, let's take an hour break. So we'll be back at 1:02. That's okay?
Thank you.
All right. We'll be coming back at 1:02 to do legislation and regulation.
Wow. Can we have that lunch on the screen?